Welcome back to another episode of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm your host, Susie Selleck, here today in Chester, Ohio, at the oldest standing courthouse in the Northwest Territory. And here to tell us about it today, I'm joined by the lovely Rachel Schultz. Rachel, thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming today.
And also, I'm joined by Jim Smith. And Jim,
thank you for being here.
You are going to start talking to us about what is special. And being here, I kind of already get the feeling of why this place is special. But let's talk about the courthouse, the academy, and the commons, why it's special.
Okay, as far as the courthouse goes, the special thing about this, it's the oldest standing courthouse in the Northwest Territory. And it's been totally restored here over a period of about the last 20 years.
Now, Rachel, can you talk to us about the Chester Shade Historical Association?
The association was formed in 1995. It's by a group of community leaders who came together and wanted to restore and preserve these sites.
Jim, can you talk to us about why the Chester Courthouse was built?
Okay, back in 1819, a group of men got together and decided they wanted a local organized government, which was part of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And so they got together and formed a county government made up of 3 commissioners and started having meetings in at the time, just a house in Salisbury Township. And discussions were made about a courthouse and a place to build the courthouse. And it was originally kicked around to have the courthouse built in Middleport. Well, that idea fell through. And Levi Stedman stepped up and said he would donate 30 acres of his land here in Chester to build the courthouse. And of course, Levi Stedman was pretty much the founder of Chester, Ohio.
Jim, talk to us a little bit more about the courthouse, some details.
Okay, in October of 1822, the commissioners decided they wanted to build an actual courthouse on the Chester grounds, and they called out specifications in their meeting on the courthouse. They called for a courthouse to be made of brick, a stone foundation, 2-story in the federal period style, and they contracted with Abel Chase, and he come up with the price of around a little over $2,100 to build the brick, the foundation, and probably the roof. And the roof was to be well timbered, a hip style roof, and it would called for wood shingles to be 18 inches long, a half-inch thick, made of pine or chestnut, and it was to be lit with 24 lights, and that means window panes. And the original specifications for that was 10-inch by 12. That was changed later to 8-inch by 10-inch panes. Okay, more about the courthouse. The brick were fired on a location not far from here. And of course, all the timber would have came close by. And we have one of the original lintels up in the Academy building. We have 2 of the original brick that have the imprint of animals in them. One of a cat and one of either a goat or a sheep. We also had a jailhouse built here, a 2-story jailhouse to house the prisoners also. And it had a dungeon built in the bottom of it for the debtors to pay their debtors' fines, which I thought was interesting. And of course, this jailhouse was built to be built on the highest ground, and of course, this location is built on the highest ground in Chester.
So I have in our script that there's an interesting tidbit, and I would love for you to touch on that right now.
Yes, as I was doing my research down at the commissioner's office, they have the original 1819 journal, started in 1819. The first book goes from 1819 to 1833, and I found in there, starting around 1823, they started paying $3 per wolf scalp that was turned in to the commissioners. Of course, back in them days, wolves were a problem here in Meigs County because they killed livestock and stuff, so a bounty was put on these wolves. And as I looked through this journal, 1833 was the last year for this first original book. I could only find one entry for a wolf scalp, which tells me by 1833 the wolf population was pretty well decimated.
Rachel, when I was talking with your dad earlier, he had alluded to the fact that this wasn't always so beautiful. In fact, for a while it stood abandoned and used a little here and there. Talk to us when the restoration began.
Some repairs were originally made in the 1950s. For example, the buttresses on the front of the courthouse building were added to support the bowing wall. In 1995, representatives from the community came together. They were the Daughters of the American Revolution, the Sons of the American Revolution, and the Daughters of America to begin the restoration process. They provided leadership and fundraising skills. In order to begin restoration, we also needed an architect to begin design, make plans, walk us through state inspections, and work with state inspectors.
Everything all up to code and absolutely beautiful, I can tell. Rachel, right across the way is this beautiful structure. So how long was the academy used for a school?
The Chester Academy, Seminary, and Teachers Institute was built in 1840, and the people who taught there were very experienced, very educated, with advanced degrees, and it wasn't just a one-room schoolhouse. The Chester Academy was used as an elementary school and a high school until 1929, when the Chester High School was built down the road, and it reopened several times up into the 1940s to accommodate overcrowding at the Chester High School.
Rachel, can you talk to us about some of the things that the children, like back then, were learning at the academy?
We know from personal accounts that in the 1920s, children were learning much of the same topics our children learn today in school, like English, arithmetic, algebra, health, industrial arts, and home economics were taught as well. And we have to remember that everything that we used or they used on a daily basis needed to be made by hand. So like your clothing, towels, any implements you would use on your farm. An interesting story would be that the boys attending high school would go by horseback or horse and buggy, and that they would store their horse and buggy at a local barn for 25 cents a week. And the girls would come to Chester on Sunday evenings with their fathers, and they would stay with a local, someone in the local community all week. And then they might also work for that family as well to make money to go to school, because at that time school, it was not free, you had to pay. Jim and I have a few interesting stories. One is that when there was bad weather outside, the children at the academy would play marbles inside, and we still have the marble circles there now.
Very, very cool. I guess indoor recess has not changed that much. However, the way our kids get water has certainly changed, because it's to my understanding, when Rachel and I were talking earlier, that they would have to bring their own cups of water if they didn't want to share out of the community dipper. Can you talk to us about the details there?
Yes. Well, back in them days, there was no public water, so they would have had to draw their water from the cistern here on site, and that consisted of a pump, a hand crank pump, who drawed the water up out of the well by a chain down inside a tube, and they would have collected their water in a pail or some kind of container and had on hand for the kids to either use a dipper or use their own cup to drink out of. And that's just the way it was back then. You supplied your own water.
Rachel, since its reopening, how is the academy being used?
The Chester Shade Historical Association uses the top floor for an office and a genealogy research library. The middle floor is used by the Daughters of America and sometimes for special events, and the bottom floor, the basement, has a warming kitchen and a seating area, and we use those for meetings, celebrations, birthday parties.
Jim, Rachel and I were talking earlier about Morgan's Raid and a couple of reenactments. So can you talk to us a little bit about some of the community events that happen here?
We have the Meigs County Heritage Festival, which is sponsored by the Chester Historical Association. We have the Meigs County Treasure Hunt, which is something new that we've started by the association, where you go out and find certain historical places that we have put forth in a list, and you take a picture of yourself and you bring that picture to us, and you have to collect all 10 pictures or 12 pictures of these various spots, and we pick a winner out of those. And that sort of promotes history in a way and gives kids and adults something fun to do so they can learn about their local history. Another thing we have done is a dinner. We've done a dinner before. We have car shows down on the commons, some reenactments also, vendors, crafters, and stuff like that. But I must say, one of the biggest reenactments we've ever done was the Morgan's Raid reenactment in 2002, 2003, somewhere along there. There must have been 3,000 or 4,000 people participated in that, and spectators. That was probably one big event for Southeastern Ohio and our community also.
Rachel, can you talk to us a little bit about the beautiful commons out there?
The commons is used pretty much the same now as it was in the past. We've got some great pictures of parades and bands and a lot of the events that have been held since the 1995 restoration. An interesting story about the commons is that people would tie their horses and buggies up at the commons so that they could go to special events or shop around town.
So today, is it still a place where people come and gather for holidays?
Yes, exactly. The whole community uses the commons just for that reason, for celebrations, and then that's also where Chester Shade Historical Association holds their events.
Rachel, it is a beautiful outside space, very lush around this time of year especially, but it must be a lot of upkeep.
Yes, and we have a lot of community support. One of those groups is the Chester Volunteer Fire Department, and they help us maintain the grounds and the commons, and we think they do a wonderful job.
Thank you for watching another episode of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm your host, Susie Selleck, here today in Chester, Ohio, at the oldest standing courthouse in the Northwest Territory. Rachel Schultz, you were amazing. Thank you so much, dear. Jim Smith, you too. Excellent. Thank you for your information.
Thank you.
And remember, travel slowly and stop often. Bye for now.